How do we use internal arts to promote resilience? Well, that's a really million-dollar question, because there are millions of people that are dealing with issues where resilience would be very helpful these days. How does our resilience get tested? By feeling cooped up in our houses, in those places where there is a stay-at-home order, not being able to do our work unless we are licensed health professionals or essential workers. Maybe our family members, if you have family members under the same roof, and your resilience may be tested by that, or simply financially. If you can't make any living because you cannot teach classes that you used to teach or do workshops that you used to do. So how do we handle these challenges will basically determine the quality of our life this year. How can we apply our skills that we develop through the internal arts? What do we do in terms of boosting resilience? Well, we actually first accept the fact that our resilience is being challenged. Because if we don't recognize that it's being challenged, we'll be trapped. This thing is happening to me. Why does this bad things happen to good people? And this kind of nonsense. It's because we don't recognize that we are going through a test. And interestingly enough, life first gives you tests and then gives you lessons. It's not like we get the lesson and then we get tested how we learned it. It's usually the other way around. We get tested and then we get the learning. Okay, well, if we're quick enough to recognize that we are going through the test of our resilience, we might as well jump right into learning state. And that requires change in state of consciousness. We need to be in the learning state of consciousness to respond instead of react to the challenge. Now, do the internal arts help with figuring out how to respond rather than reacting to challenges?
I would believe so. Yeah. Especially when it comes to looking at it not directly as an obstacle, but changing your perspective on it. And in martial arts, we sometimes, there can be two ways of looking at it. Looking at it as your opponent, right? Like it's something you need to overcome, or perhaps maybe it's something that is not an opponent, but a partner in your learning curve or your learning process. Yeah. I wonder if anybody else has that perspective here.
Well, we actually can do something really, really cool. We can create a filter of perception. We already have filters of perception. These filters of perception have been downloaded into our consciousness through upbringing, through religion, through education, through the social mores. We all have filters of perception that filter things, that polarize our perception, that make our perception more obscure or perhaps distorted. Nobody doubts, I hope, in our small group that we have some filters of perception that affect how we perceive things. And most of the time, we don't have the handle on those filters. In other words, we don't even know that we have those filters, and often we think that we perceive things as they are. And in most cases, we don't perceive things as they are. We perceive things as they are filtered through our filters of perception. Well, that's exactly what we need to use. We need to use the right filters. What would be the right filter that would immediately put you into the appropriate state of consciousness? I call it the learning filter. Imagine a certain point in your life. You perceived everything as an opportunity to learn. I'm pretty sure that we all have gone through that type of learning process. Probably at the age of 1, 2, maybe 3. You learned the language, your native language, or maybe even several languages. You learn how to walk. You learn how to relate to people. You learn how to ask for help, or you ask for attention. You learn how to ask questions. Did you ever go through the phase in your life, in your childhood, when you asked a bunch of questions? Most children
still do
have a tendency to ask questions, especially the famous question, why? Why is sky blue? Why do I have to put the shoes on when I go for a hike? Why do I have to eat breakfast? Why do I have to take shower? All of these whys are really valuable learning opportunities because we literally question everything that people around us take for granted. Why do you have to brush teeth? I don't know. Don't want to have the teeth fall out of your head. Well, if you're a child, you're like, oh, they're falling out of my head anyway.
Yeah.
So what we do is we're learning how to question everything, but also get the answers and accept the answers, and sometimes also exercise discernment when it comes to receiving answers, because not all answers are going to be meaningful. And so basically that's the filter of perception. Imagine you can create an energy bubble around you. We have these exercises for developing awareness of Wei Qi, of the energy field around us. Well, imagine that this energy bubble, like a soap bubble, has a bunch of different colors on different sides of it. And different colors are associated with different types of filters of perception. So what color would be the filter of perception that gives you the ability to learn things? It may be a nonsensical question because we don't know what color it should be for each person. For different people, it may actually be different.
It's all subjective, yeah.
I'm just checking if you're listening. So what we do is we learn to recognize that we have certain particular type of energy associated with a particular state of consciousness. And then what we can do is we can actually spread more of that energy around the bubble so that more of that bubble surface is covered with that particular type of energy associated with the learning process. So imagine that you take a journey down the memory lane, all the way back to your childhood, all the way back to the terrible twos, or whatever age you were at when you were asking all these questions, why, and learning a great deal about how to be a human being. Imagine being able to look at yourself as a child from a point of view of a fly on a wall. And the fly doesn't care about your appearance, doesn't care about your behavior. It only pays attention to your energy. From a point of view of a fly on a wall, we may be able to perceive the energy associated with that state of consciousness. All other states of consciousness we are not particularly concerned with because we don't want to get into all the states of consciousness we were in at the age of 2. Thank you very much. However, the learning state would be what we're looking for.
Well,
And
beginner's
that
mind,
energy can have certain color, certain texture, certain density, certain movement to it. Imagine you can gather some of this energy, like it's an energy paint, and a couple of paint buckets. Back then, you had lots of that kind of energy, so it would be easy to share. And so as a child, you were just bursting with that energy all the time, I'm sure. See if you can gather some of that energy paint. And then take the trip along the memory lane back to the present time and pour all that energy paint all over your energy bubble, repainting it into that color, into that texture, into that quality of energy associated with that learning state of consciousness. So that whatever you look at, you immediately recognize it as a lesson rather than a problem. Now that's going to transform the quality of life immediately because you no longer have any problems. You consider everything that you perceive as a learning opportunity rather than a problem. Well, who wouldn't want to live life problems free? This is exactly what we do to achieve that. We no longer perceive things as problems. We perceive them as opportunities to learn and grow. Now that is also a golden key to resilience because we no longer react to whatever life throws our way. We actually can respond to it in the most intelligent manner.